if you want to begin with the soles of your feet together and your knees wide and having some sort of support behind or out to the outsides of your outer knees or your thighs, you can start that way with the soles of your feet together, or you could just maybe have something rolled up. If you have another blanket under your knees with your legs long, you could start like that. Well, it just let you have an option for what you want to do with your hips and your legs to start. But we will start lying back over your bolster, right? And so this could also just look like, instead of the block under your head, you could also just double fold a blanket. You could have a folded blanket or a blanket folded and then folded again for this kind of height. We'll start there. We should have another person or two joining. We'll just give a few more minutes for folks to join up and spend the first maybe 5 to 10 minutes in supported relaxation. Okay, I'll meet you there. Sandbags, as usual, are a bonus if you have sandbags and you're doing soles of your feet together, knees wide, and you have sandbags. You could just place the sandbags right along the hip creases, right over the hip joints. Okay, just to help again pressure and ground your limbs and your joints a little more. Okay. Will not mind if I do. Here's like a typical head fold blanket you could throw and use for your head, or you could double fold this up and put it up here for your head if you're not using a block. Okay. And if you're using the sandbags, right, they might take the place of having to use the strap, right? So if you're on a blanket, your feet tend to want to just slide down along the soft surface of your blanket. Maybe you use the strap for this. Or if you're using sandbags, the weight of the sandbags should more or less just fold your legs in place, or you could take just one sandbag and put it over your feet. And that will also help to secure and ground the legs and the feet. Let's begin here. Just give yourself as much time as you need to make sure that you are well and comfortably supported. So if you're trying to do maybe too much with not enough prop or not enough support, just make it very simple. Simplify. And then find your way to a comfortable rest where then you can start to check inward. Noticing tension in all the places where we typically tend to hold tightness or tension, the base of the skull, the hinge of the jaw, the neck, the throat, upper back, tops of your shoulders, hips, lower back, even your hands. Sometimes it's nice even to just take a little bit of weight into your hands. Notice just how much your hands tend to fidget, kind of like your eyes behind your eyelids. Very challenging sometimes to keep the eyes still. And if you feel yourself beginning to settle, really sensing into the weight of your body, having released tension around the throat and the neck and the jaw, the root of the tongue, behind your eyes. There's a comfortable sense of spaciousness or openness, airy kind of clarity and lightness in your head, in your body. Observe the coming and going of your breath. Watch inhalation, watch exhalation. We're not going to try to manipulate or control the breath in any way. See if it will just resolve itself into something that feels kind of slow and easy, restful. Take these first few minutes to really find quiet, find your internal quiet. Sometimes it takes the first few minutes to really get there, and then we want to be there long enough to really feel, be in that presence. Sometimes we drop right in. Let's take another couple of breaths in this first pose. Lengthening, deepening. If you were in soles of feet together, knees wide, Baddha Konasana, you could also just extend your legs. Set sandbags aside if you're using sandbags. So we'll come from this setup onto your side. You can move just right up into your hands. You're not too close to the ground, just move right into your hands and bring yourself up. Okay, and then let's set aside what you have here to reset up what you might want for a recline twist. So we're going to go rib cage in one direction, hips in the opposite direction. Okay, so as usual, you have a couple of options for that. You can use your bolster. You can have your bolster, you're lying with your legs to one side, hands to either side, bring yourself down, head turned or not, and you're there. Nice, deep, restorative, supported recline twist. If you're more comfortable doing the version where you're lying down on your back, and you have sandbags or blocks or other blankets, you can also bolster, you can also prop this one up quite a lot, right? By bringing knees into your chest, and then your knees go off to one side, right? But oftentimes there's tightness in the hips. You might have a gap between the legs, so you can bolster, you can blanket that up, and then you can even sandbag some weight over that leg. That just really tends to ground everything to the floor. Then this opposite shoulder could take your other sandbag. You've got your second sandbag. Let that one weight your opposite shoulder down. And if you want to have even prop underneath that back shoulder, you could go there. Remember, this is all about like propping up the gaps. We really want a sense of what we're trying to let release from gravity and move the gravity toward the floor to really have the floor, right? And then where we feel like there's tension or floating or stress around a joint and something doesn't want to come quite all the way to the floor because of whatever, sandbags are a nice prop for helping just to weight you, or props in between limbs if there's any little bit of a gap. So a recline twist of your choice. Make your way there. Again, and make it very simple, right? If you're trying to do something a little bit elaborate and you don't quite have enough prop or maybe the right kind of prop, just simplify it. Go back. Just do something simple that will support you. It's all about using what you have to cultivate this deep sense of release and restoration, rest, relaxation, letting go, cultivating a sense of your nervous system being able to power down. There's no tension in the breath. There's no effort on your part whatsoever. So just keep coming back with your attention. Let this also be a practice in gently, easily focusing your attention, knowing that your mind will wander. Okay, so if you are using sandbags at all, go ahead and just let help the sandbags just to roll off wherever you might be using your sandbags, and take another couple of breaths just without the weight. Good. And then we'll just slowly move out of the rotation. So if you're on your back, you just bring your feet to the floor, hips to center, your feet to the floor. Maybe bring your knees into your chest. Hug your knees to your chest for 2 or 3 breaths. And if you're using your bolster and facing the floor, just press yourself up. You pause in a comfortable seat for a breath. Maybe do a round or 2 of cow pose and cat pose. And then you'll take yourself the opposite direction onto your bolster. Okay, so we're ready to go the other way. Let's go ahead and move into the opposite direction. Knees to chest, knees to one side, arms wide where you're using the bolster, right? And then just go ahead and prop up where you feel like filling in any little gaps, like mortar, bricks and mortar. Experiment with sandbags, blankets, a little weight over that outer hip, or maybe it's a little down closer to your knee. It's not too important about exact placement, right? This is just kind of following your body, where your body wants that little bit of weight if you are playing with sandbags. Right over the armpit, maybe down near the elbow, more in the middle, over the muscle rather than a joint, although it tends to be pretty effective for weight over the joints. Take all the time you need to make it right for you. we'll hold these a little bit longer. The poses this evening where we're using a lot of props hold slightly longer. So just let yourself breathe, observe, settle in, sink in. Now there just to be a lot of space, sense of space and ease. So pause, a little space to linger at the end of exhalation. So once again, if you're using sandbags, let's go ahead and remove the weight. Okay, and then we can remove anything else you might be using as a prop and come back onto your back. And if you're facing the floor with your bolster, we'll just set your bolster aside and bring yourself onto your back. And do a little bit of cat-cow here, tilting the pelvis, finding a little bit of movement in the spine, just here on your back. So you're just breathing in, a little tilt of your pelvis away from you as your abdomen fills up, there's space behind your lumbar spine. And on the exhale, pull that a little bit towards you. You might notice at the same time as you're breathing in, might let your chin tilt. And use a blanket behind your head here if you want to or need to, but let your chin tilt back. Space behind your neck, space behind your lumbar spine. And then on the exhale, lengthen the lumbar spine. Bring your chin a little bit more downward. It'll be very gentle, very minimal amount of movement in the neck, but see if you can mirror what's happening in the lumbar spine with what's happening in your neck spine. And then with what's happening in your sacrum, with what's happening in your rib cage spine, the back of the rib cage. Take 2 more breaths. Good. Okay, and then let's take both legs along. Push both heels out to the foot of your mat. The backs of your knees open up. Let your feet fall. Relax the weight of your legs entirely. And we'll take the right foot. You're going to slide up onto the outer foot, outer ankle. Knees coming up like tree pose or Baddha Konasana. Then stand the right foot on the floor. Push to the inner edge. Slowly, slowly, slowly push. A little gentle arch in your low back. You want to engage the back of the hip and extend the hip flexors and the psoas. You can do that. Let your right knee fall wide. Slide your foot back. Repeat that a few more times. Let's just say no set number of repetitions. Anywhere between 3, 5, 6. So see if you can just be more in how this movement feels very fluid. I'll do one more and then I'll pause and then I will switch legs, switch sides. Just stay very connected to the ground, to how much you can just let things slide and glide along the floor. It's a little easier with a blanket over your mat, smooth floor, surface, carpet, your sticky mat. This tends to cause a little bit of friction or resistance. I'll do one more this way. And then pause again. Okay, so then let's come from your back onto your side. Take your time. And down on the floor on the back for a little bit. So just take your time coming up if you can. Sense the shift and pressure. Still have glasses. Remember to move my glasses. And we'll set up for a supported child's pose. Okay, if your knees are comfortable with this, if your ankles, back, and your hips are comfortable with this, so it's pretty deep flexion at the knee and the hip, right? So prop this up as much as you want to with all the stuff you have. You can make this comfortable for sensitive knees. And then again, if it's just something that you know you shouldn't do because of issues with your knees, or kneecaps, knee joints, and just take a forward fold over maybe the seat of a chair, or you could bring your bolster behind your knees and forward fold over your more extended legs. But if you're okay in this sort of position, let's support this up as much as we can, as much as we need to, right? So we can, if the ankles are tight, there's a gap between the top of your ankle and the floor, and you can blanket under the ankles. The knees will be a little bit wide. Your bolster has space to sit here in between your knees. And then you can also, if you come down and the hips are still a little bit up off the feet, wedge a folded blanket between your hips and your heels. I've done this many, 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 many times. Now there's like a little bench. When you go back, right, all the gaps are filled. And you just, I think you feel like, I don't know, like closest metaphor is like metaphor, like mortar, bricks and mortar. Fill the gaps. And then a sandbag. You can wedge a sandbag around, wrangle a sandbag around to your lower back. There's a nice sense of weighted release in your lower back. Okay, so take the time you need to set all of that up. Your arms completely rest here. So if you're in a version of the supported child's pose where your bolster is angled upward, so your arms are up in the air, make sure you have some kind of support here under the arms if your arms don't quite, or the elbows don't quite meet the floor. Okay. If the neck doesn't like the turn, the neck doesn't want to be in rotation, you can always just move your bolster out and rest your forehead on it. And then you have just extended arms. Something like that. You might still want a little bit of prop under your rib cage or your chest, but if you're okay here, head turned one side, you can just be with the head turned in one direction for a little bit, and then when you feel like you want to turn your head, turn your head. And like turning your head at this point, you want to go ahead and turn your head. You're resting on one side of your head. Nice. Can we take one more breath in the pose? And we'll come up from there. You could just push the floor, lift your head, lift your spine. Your sandbag could just roll off of your back if you're using the sandbag. And sit. Those things aside. Aside. Keep one up. Let's come back down onto your back unless you would like to do pigeon pose facing the floor. Okay, so that's your version where you're from here and knee forward, rather leg long behind you, right? And you're folded over this front leg, resting your head on your hands, rather. Or you're on your back. You might be against a wall with your foot against the wall and you got opposite ankle crossed over and you're using same side hand as that lifted knee. If you resist a little bit, you've got the leverage of the wall, or if you're just in the middle of the floor, you have your hands behind one knee, pulling that knee toward your chest. And let's just take not a long hold here, maybe anywhere between 5 and 10 breaths in pigeon pose. You're on your back. It feels nice sometimes to move a little from side to side. Moving in the direction opposite of the hip that you are looking to put some space and blood flow into. Switch sides when you're ready to switch sides. Nice. So another breath, maybe 2 more breaths wherever you are. You might already be out of the pose. We're just resting quietly, resting, breathing on your back or in a comfortable seat. And then pause. Give yourself a moment here. Once you're out, pause. Okay, and then over to one side. And then from here, you might want a chair, couch, or a bed if it's low enough to get your lower legs over. So like knees and lower legs at a right angle over the mattress on your bed, or a chair. Yeah. Okay, so we're just gonna lie down on the back with the legs elevated. Okay, so if you know you want support behind your head, have another bit of support behind your head, but also sandbags. A sandbag maybe over the ankles or the shins, just as another tool to help ground and bring a sense of grounding with your legs elevated. Okay, so that's just your lower legs in the seat of the chair. We'll go ahead. I can't just hoist hand back up over just below my knees, right across my shins. And then from there, ease my line down. Support behind your head or not, just if you need it, have it. If you're okay without it, just gonna rest here. Right, so supported legs up. We've done this the last couple of times we've done a legs up pose. We've used the wall or furniture. And this pose is really all about the legs and circulation. So it's a nice release or relieving of tension or fatigue in the feet and the legs. Might as well have a nice sense of the grounding of your lower back. You could also have, sometimes we do this with a long folded blanket in between your sacrum and the floor. You could also have that little extra bit. So we'll just breathe here. A couple of minutes. Just in a couple of minutes more. Also a very mild inversion, right? So you might also at the same time noticing what's happening with any sensation in your legs, your lower extremities, having them up over your heart, but then also the sense of the kind of cranial pressure. Your head and your heart being below. You might think about the work of the heart with respect to your orientation in space, right? However, you are oriented to gravity. So when you're upright, your heart is working against gravity to get blood upward to the shoulders, to the neck, to the throat, to the head. Very easy trip downward. Harder trip back up from your feet, from the ground back to your heart. And we're talking very, very minor gradations or differences. Just get your heart and your circulatory system a slightly different vantage point. Slightly different posture from which it can balance. Find a slightly different route toward equilibrium or homeostasis. And then all of that aside, just feel. How do you feel? Let's take another 3 or 4 breaths here. And so you can, if you're on the seat of a chair with a sandbag, slide your heels forward. You can reach the sandbag, or maybe just let your knees fall to your chest, and then you can reach the sandbag and move it from your knees. Your feet to the floor, come over onto your side. Maybe just pause again, sensing the shift of the pressure from lying on your back to your side, and then from your side upward. And then we'll set up again for our Shavasana. So we'll come to the end in a Shavasana. I'm going to go back to the bolster. and just have a blanket or two rolled up for my knees to come over. And have my roll that blanket here. If you have that, you can do that. I'm gonna take another blanket and kind of triple fold the blanket for my head instead of the block. So I can take a surplus of blankets. Just use what you have whatever you need to support your spine, to support your head, to support your legs if you can. And then make any other adjustments in your space that you want to. If you want to go even a little more dim or dark in your room, you can do that. I have a compact fluorescent I'm going to turn off just because I can always sense its sort of extra brightness. Yeah. That one. That one. Okay, so we take a few minutes to come out of a pose, take a few minutes to set up the next pose, and then we'll go a few minutes past the 7:15 hour mark, maybe a minute or two, just to give ourselves a sense of really getting the full benefit of the rest. Sandbags still here, sandbags if you want to have sandbags, crease of the hips, or if you're lying close to the floor and you can get them over your shoulders like we did last week. We'll set them over the tops of your shoulders. Always try to support yourself, set yourself up with the prop so that you're not feeling any kind of any gravitational pull or strain on your joints. You don't want to be just hanging in your joints. And restorative, you want to have as much support as you need, but your joints are resting. You feel soft and restful. Soften any tension across the brow, around the eye sockets, over the cheekbones, moving downward at the hinge of the jaw, and the root of the tongue again. Find a sense of spaciousness in your cranium. Relax the throat. If you want to breathe out through the mouth, you might even breathe out through the mouth. Let everything else find its comfortable wave-like support. And then you could just be floating, cool. Just take another 2 or 3 breaths. And then from here, just take your time. Take your time. Whatever you need to do to come away from your props or set them aside, push them aside using your feet. Come from your back onto your side if you can. You just let yourself rest on your same props, just on your side. Just push from here to come up. Sitting in any comfortable seat, anywhere you're comfortable, just for this last moment where your eyes can open. Now take this quality, this internal quality of quiet, of stillness with you into the rest of your evening, into the next few days ahead. Till you return to your mat, till you return to your practice. We'll close here. Namaste, and thank you very much for your time, as always. Enjoy the rest of your week. Thanks again. Dun, dun. There. Oh, last. Thanks, guys. Peggy had to go a little bit early. Well, thanks, guys. Good to see you all again. Send me any questions you might have or special requests. If there's anything you kind of want to work on or make sure that we highlight or get to or spend more time in, just think about it. Let me know whenever you want to let me know. Okay. Thanks. Have a great weekend. I'll see everyone next week.